Hello and welcome to our review of the highlights of the 24 Hours of Le Mans 2001. This set to be the 69th running of the great race, headquartered of course in Le Mans, the city in northwestern France, best known for its motorsport, but also home to 150,000 people, and in its centre a beautiful old medieval city with its cobbled streets, its old castles and its old inns. Every June, Le Mans devotes itself to sports car racing. And this year in particular, with the return of Bentley and MG, there is even more focus on the history of Le Mans and its 24-hour sports car race than ever before. As has been the tradition for many years, the cars are assembled for scrutineering on the Monday and Tuesday of race week in the centre of Le Mans at the Place des Jacobins, just underneath the old cathedral. Audi, last year's winners, have returned, looking strong again, but just a two-car team this year after their triumphant 1-2-3 in the year 2000. The Place des Jacobins on the Monday and Tuesday, always incredibly busy, and the opportunity for all the teams to take their individual team photo shots, for the public to meet and get their autographs signed, and for small boys to investigate how a race car works. The Dome team. Two cars this year, one for John Nielsen, one for Jan Lemans, and their two young supporters in each case. And the return of Bentley. The new Bentley prototype is running an Audi engine and gearbox, part of the VAG group, of course, Bentley now. An incredibly high-tech machine it is too, and the only entry in the LMP 900 closed coupe class. Bentley has been the centre of attention for the entire year and showed extremely well during the May test sessions. The team, built upon a group of British engineers, has focused particularly on endurance and reliability, and they've already run a very successful 26-hour test at the Manicourt circuit elsewhere in France. One new driver is Eric van der Poel, who's replaced James Weaver in the team. Martin Brundle brings experience, Stefan Ortelli brings Le Mans victories, and young Guy Smith brings some drive. And the new MG team. The cars built by Lola, run by Chamberlain Racing Team, and also with a very strong all-British driver lineup. The MGs are competing in the LMP 675 class. They're very new cars with very new engines, all built from scratch in a matter of months. Whilst reliability may not be their strong suit, outright speed is expected, and particularly expected to lead their class come qualifying. Chrysler are back for 2001 with a much stronger and better prepared effort than their tentative attempt in 2000. Led by such past winners as Yannick Dalma, and with the talent and speed of Olivier Beretta, the driving lineup is formidable. The team is very aware that they have missed out on some testing, and they've only run one previous race at Donington with just the one car. The chassis has been built by Dallara in Italy. The engine, a 6-litre V8, been developed with Chrysler's Mopar division, and they should be expecting to put on a strong show, even if they can't challenge the Audis outright. In the GTS class, the factory effort from Chevrolet with the Corvettes is looking extremely strong. Also a factory effort from the GM stable is the two-car team from Cadillac. These cars had a strong run last year, but they have been substantially redesigned at Brackley in England under the guidance of Nigel Stroud. The weather this year does not look at all good. The forecast for the weekend is terrible, which will be of great concern to director of the course, Jack Iix, there, talking to one of the team managers, who has to worry about what is going to happen on a flooded track. Whatever the weather this year, there's a lot of driving experience out there. Johnny Herbert, former Grand Prix driver, former Le Mans winner, Stefan Johansson, former Grand Prix driver, former Le Mans winner, and many, many others. Scott Pruitt, straight out of Champ Car, Pedro Lamy, a former Grand Prix driver himself. And a great favourite with the crowds, the Paynos team. The French are particularly well represented at Le Mans 2001. Henri Pescarolo's bright green cars run with the Peugeot engine, and a little joke from the engineers and mechanics here with their false mock Henri Pescarolo beards. The other Courage chassis has a Judd engine to be run by Philippe Gache, which was very quick in testing in May. Vanina Ricks, daughter of the great Jackie, will be running for Paul Belmondo's Corona-sponsored Viper team. One of 3 women drivers in the race this year, Vanina has got here on merit after a successful season in Belgian GT racing. Dad wishes her luck. And this is the all-new Celine, its first time at Le Mans, running a 6-litre V8 competition for the Corvettes in GTS. In LMP 675, the Reynards with the Judd engines will be quick. And Tom Christensen gets some helpful advice on how to win at Le Mans. Scrutinering takes place over 2 days. The cars are weighed, the drivers are weighed. The technical process is very lengthy. The crowd builds up throughout the week at Le Mans, ticket sales having been stronger than ever before, and the world's media attend in their hundreds. For each of the major manufacturers participating at Le Mans, the intention of the world's press is of course vital. Audi last year brought over journalists from all around the world. This year they've gone one better, and they've actually built them their own hotel so that the journalists can get some rest during the week and have somewhere to come to during the long 24 hours that is the 69th running of the Le Mans race. The world's media were extremely impressed with Audi's generous hospitality. Back in the city centre, the public were getting their first glimpse of a unique feature of this year's Le Mans, a feature race for historic cars. The cars themselves were being put through the same process as the modern cars in the 24 hours. Races to include Sterling Moss, David Piper, cars from the early 50s right through to 1966.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Thank you.
The same technical process, engines inspected, weighed, driver's licenses checked, and finally the all-important sticker from the ACO organising club to make sure that you could take your beautiful historic car out on the Le Mans circuit. This a very rare French monopole from the 1950s, a British-owned Talbot, and one of the most historic D-type Jaguars of them all, owned by Valentine Lindsay, there at the wheel of the car. There were 3 C-type Jaguars, including the one for Sterling Moss. And David Piper here, a racing driver for over 40 years, always popular in the paddock at Le Mans. Sterling Moss, swamped by autograph hunters as ever. Piper's beautiful 250 LM Ferrari raced here first in 1965, and the cars made a wonderful sight, lined up underneath the cathedral. And then the historic racers were able to enjoy every modern motorist's dream, the run of the roads of a major European city with a police escort. cars made a wonderful sight, and so delighted with the Automobile Club de l'Ouest, the organisers of the events at Le Mans, that they've announced that from next year there will be annual historic motorsport events taking place on the actual 24-hour circuit every September. And so down to the modern business of motor racing. The transporter park leads us on to pit lane itself, and this, the first public open day. Wednesday leads into Thursday's qualifying before Friday's rest day and the race on Saturday and Sunday. Mark Blundell looking extremely confident as the MG team prepare for their first proper competitive run in public. The MG has been built by Lola Cars in Huntingdon, and there's Martin Birain, the owner of Lola Cars, with the MG engine. Audi produced a newspaper every day to keep us all updated. Similar extravagance from General Motors and from Chrysler. Bentley, on the other hand, preferred to stick with the traditional aspects and produced the 1929 winning car. The Bentley display wasn't the only one for the crowds to go and look at. The region of the South was also honouring the famous Franco-Swiss designer Franco Zabaro with some of his more outlandish creations from the 60s, 70s and 80s. The driver's briefing is always a key feature before anyone can get out on the track. Stefan Ortelli and Philippe Gache are followed by Jackie Ickx himself, whose signature is required on some photographs of him looking a little younger a few years before. Jackie, the only man ever to have won Le Mans 6 times, an extraordinary achievement. So the drivers gathered for the briefing. Johnny Herbert talking to Terada, the Japanese driver who's now competed at Le Mans for 18 different occasions. And everyone gets to sign this year's poster with Bentley so prominently displayed.
Okay.
On behalf of the President of the ACO, Michel Cosson, and the organizer, I'd like to welcome you to this 69th edition of Le Mans. Before to start this meeting, I believe it's the right moment to have some thoughts for those who are not with us this weekend. Je pense que c'est une excellente occasion avant de démarrer cette réunion.
A touching moment as Jackie Ickx, who drove frequently with both Bob Wollek and Michele Alboreto, remembers them, and Jean-Louis Ricci and John Winter, who are not racing at Le Mans this year.
À Michele Alboreto, à Bob Wollek et d'autres.
And so to the racetrack. Wednesday afternoon, 2 hours qualifying, followed by 2 in the dark of Wednesday evening, and the same format on Thursday. Every driver has to run 3 competitive laps and has to drive 3 laps in the dark in order to qualify. 3 drivers per car, of course, and 48 cars out there. The pre-qualifying has happened earlier on in the year, both by the ACO's own selection and by the events at the test weekend in May, when 52 cars were invited, 48 finally selected. Right from the very beginning of practice, the 2 works Audis looked as strong as one would expect. But they were accompanied by the number 4 Audi in the famous Gulf racing colours, the car owned and run and managed by Stefan Johansson, and himself the lead driver. The Chryslers were also immediately quick, one of them pursued here by the 4th Audi, that entered by Champion Racing from the United States, and to be driven by Ralph Kennelers, Johnny Herbert and Didier Thays. Jan Lemans there and his Doan team also expected to be quick in qualifying, as they had been at the May test weekend. A very neat chassis and a very powerful engine. The only doubt hangs over the long-term reliability of the Judd engine, and that is also the case for this, the red and white Danish-sponsored car of John Nielsen, to be shared with Kato from Japan under the auspices of Team Go. The 3-car Chrysler prototype team the number 16 car is to be shared by Olivier Beretta, Carl Wendlinger and Pedro Lamy, and they were immediately quick on Wednesday afternoon. Also quick was the number 15 car for Dalmas, Montagny and Sarrazin. Dalmas, of course, a 4-times winner of the Le Mans 24-hour race. Bentley's preparation went forward smoothly. A lot of experience in this car, as well as a chance for the young drivers like Guy Smith to shine alongside Ortelli and Brundle. Martin Brundle, of course, a man of immense Le Mans experience, winner in 1990, and the man who really made the Toyota work so well in 1999. A year out in 2000, but delighted to be back as one of the new Bentley boys. And out on the circuit here with Wayne Taylor in the Cadillac, we get to see how frustrating it can be to be held up by the speed differentials between the prototypes here on his Cadillac and one of the Porsche 911s in the GT class. The speed differential typically on the Mulsanne straight over 50 miles an hour. Once they started getting some clear laps, the MGs were immediately very quick, and certainly leaders in the 675 class. But they did continue to have technical difficulties, and the car spent quite a lot of time in the garage with the bonnet off while people peered into the mysteries of the new engine. In the GTS class, the Franz Conrad owned and driven Celine was clearly the class of the field. Some 3 seconds a lap slower, around 3 minutes 55 a lap, was the first of the Corvettes. However, the Corvettes were confident of maintaining a steadier race pace. The Paynoses not having such a good year in 2001. Still front-engined, but no longer with the big throbbing V8 motor, with a different chassis and troubles in every department, handling, engine and brakes. It was to prove a testing weekend for the entire Paynos crew. By midnight on Thursday, qualifying was over. The Audi works team had done all they wanted to do, run every different combination of fuel weight, different tyres, different settings, and were sitting effortlessly at the top of the field, with Laurent Aiello just having pipped Biela in order to take first and second positions, and their fastest lap, 3 minutes 32 seconds. Just a couple of seconds faster than the privateer Audis, the dome of Jan Lammers, the Chryslers and the Bentleys and the Cadillacs. So the official positions show that Laurent Aiello was just a few thousandths of a second quicker than his teammate Biela. Friday is traditionally a rest day at Le Mans. One of the traditions is that the hand imprints of the previous year's winners are displayed to the public down in the centre of Le Mans. Biela, Christensen and Pirot were proud to join this great 50-year-long tradition. Mind you, if they could win again in 2001, they'd save themselves the trouble of having to do this next year. Meanwhile, out on the racetrack, which of course are public roads for all the time it's not being used for racing, the crowd is building. Out of an expected crowd this year of 250,000 people, over 80,000 of them are expected to be British, and everyone gets a chance to show off, do their burnouts, drink their beer and have their picnics, and show off everything from replica cars to large gatherings from every single make club in Europe. Porsches, of course, as ever at Le Mans, but this year in particular there were columns and columns of MGs. One of the great traditions of spectating at Le Mans is camping. But as all these tents went up on Friday, people must have been getting more and more worried about the weather, because it had rained on Friday morning, would rain on Friday evening, and the forecast for the weekend was terrible. Mind you, that didn't seem to put out this gentleman's barbecue. Inside the paddock, Friday is the one day in which members of the public really can get to look at the cars a little more closely, whilst down in the town there's all sorts of distractions laid on for the enjoyment of the visitors from all over the world. The Le Mans 24-hour race is really one of the few races in the world to which large numbers of American race fans travel every year. No exception in 2001. The rest of Friday was devoted down in the center of the town to the parade of the historic drivers and the historic cars, led off by Sterling Moss. There was another C-type, beautiful ex-Écurie Cos car, and then the D-types, winners of so many Le Mans for Jaguar during the 1950s. The historic cars were now all scrutineered, and the drivers really looking forward to this first ever chance to race on the historic circuit of the South.
Dès qu'il pouvait d'ailleurs aller vraiment flirter avec la barre des 300 km/h.
Back in the center of town, the modern-day drivers were getting their moment in front of the fans. The traditional Parade des Pilotes is something that is looked forward to enormously by many of the population of Le Mans who simply can't get a ticket to the race itself. The MG drivers there, swamped by young fans, as are the Chrysler drivers. Luc Alphand, the famous French skier, having his first ever Le Mans. Presentations of every sort to everybody. The Corvette drivers enjoying their moment in France. And the French crew of the Cadillac signing plenty of autographs. And last year's winner enjoying their part in the parade. The Champagne's crew, Magnussen, Brabham and Lagos. And Claudia Hurtgen, one of 3 lady drivers in the Le Mans 2001. The Courage Peugeot team, extremely popular, all French driver lineup. And again, a touching reminder of those we're missing this year. And lastly, and most importantly, the 24-hour trophy itself is brought back by the previous year's victors for presentation on Sunday afternoon. Some of the drivers and lots of the celebrities associated with the race this year ended up with the mayor's reception in the Hôtel de Ville, where there was a chance to mix and mingle and drink some excellent French champagne and enjoy the atmosphere that is the Le Mans 24-hour race. There was also an opportunity for the mayor to recognize the wonderful news of the return of Bentley to Le Mans by presenting the French president of Bentley France with a special commemorative trophy. And while some were enjoying champagne and canopies indoors, others were enjoying beer and burnouts out in the main square of Le Mans. Saturday morning dawned cold and overcast. Normally, Le Mans in June is blazing. Certainly the year 2000 was extremely hot. But everybody in their jackets, worrying about what was going to happen. The historic racers got ready. More photo opportunities for Stirling Moss. The historic cars all been beautifully prepared. And while some watched the morning warm-up for the 24-hour races, others were more concentrated on getting the best seat and the best drink and getting prepared to watch the Le Mans Legends sports car race. Barry Williams, the British veteran, was keen to make sure that the track in front of his car was specially clean. The drivers running across the track and jumping into their cars was a feature of Le Mans from the very beginning in the 1920s up until 1969. And the acknowledged master of the Le Mans start was none other than Stirling Moss himself. He may now be 71 years old, but he's expecting to run across the road to start this retrospective race with as much vigor as he always used to do. Some a little more alert than others, and a number of the historic racers very serious indeed. Camera crews make a dash for safety, and there's Stirling, 5th away. Not bad for a 71-year-old. Jackie Ickes, clerk of the course, looking slightly despairing at some of the chaos further down the grid, but nobody appeared to hit anybody else, and the field all set off on what was in fact to be the warm-up lap, and they'd be brought round to the start again under the control of the pace car. A quick review there of who was on the ball and who wasn't. Justin Law at the front in the famous Lister Coupe, a little slower away than Gary Pearce in the open Lister. Stirling looking seriously determined, door open with one hand, finger on the starter button with the other, and away in a tremendous power slide. Sadly, before even getting a chance to take the green flag, Justin Law's Lister Coupe was out with an engine problem. Having come all this way, that was a great shame. And so under the pace car, back to the start-finish line, with now Gary Pearson's Lister there in the front from David Piper's lurid green 250 LM Ferrari, and Peter Hartmann in the actual car that won for Aston Martin in the main race in 1959. Right from the start, Gary Pearson in the Lister Jaguar goes into an early lead while Hartmann tries to find a way round the lightweight E-Type coupe driven by Frank Sittner. The Dunlop chicane a little unfair on these old cars with their old brakes. That was a slowing down measure on the current cars installed 5 or 6 years ago. And down to the S's, Hardman does find a way past David Piper, followed by Agas's Bizzarini, drawn in the 330 LM Ferrari, and the first of the birdcage Maseratis. The other feature, of course, that has changed since these cars raced here in their heyday has been the installation of the FIA chicanes, not universally popular either with the modern drivers, but certainly not with the historic drivers, whose cars' brakes take a tremendous beating as they have to slow down from top speed in order to negotiate first the left-hander and then the right-hander down the old Mulsanne straight, which used to see these cars go faster than they went anywhere else in the world. Jaguar XK120 there, belonging to John Foster, with some sort of mechanical trouble, but he looked hopeful about getting himself back out on the course again. A quick look at the dipstick. And round at the end of the first lap, Pearson led by a considerable margin from Sittner, and making great ground was Paul Hayward Halfpenny in that Lola Mark 6 GT, which was of course the precursor to the famous run of Ford GT40s and Ford Mark IIs. Sittner, as ever, on the limit, locking his brakes through the Dunlop chicane, but that Lola Mark 6 GT, a very pretty car, and this is the first time this car has been out to compete in over 20 years. Hardman can clearly get past Piper on the twisty bits. He, of course, is a young professional driver who's raced here at Le Mans himself. And that, sadly, is the end of an extremely expensive motor. That's Eric Herrema's 330 LM Ferrari with the engine gone. Frank Sittner hanging on desperately in front of the Lola Mark 6, who in turn is fending off Piper and Hardman. Marshall Bailey there taking a slightly unorthodox line through the chicane. The Fraser Nash, one of the earliest cars in this race, will appear to have lost their bonnet strap, but hopefully that won't cause any further damage. And the beautiful and very rare little French DB, a great feature of the smallest classes in the 1950s races, now owned by Mittler of the United States, being driven very enthusiastically, while Lotus battles C-Type Jaguar, a true reflection of the period. But that sadly was the end for Frank Sittner in a very, very rare Jaguar, now owned by Sir Anthony Bamford. And Rick Hall, perhaps Britain's leading old car restorer, has obviously got a problem with his very recently restored lovely Talbot number 10. There's a contrast of age and styles, and diving through the middle comes the leader, Gary Pearson, in the Lister Jaguar. Everybody managing to get out of the way, but the number 50 car lapping people very early on. Classic shots there of Stirling Moss drifting the C-Type Jaguar and down the Mulsanne straight, acknowledging those he too is lapping. This car, the actual car which won the race in 1953, driven by Duncan Hamilton, whose son Adrian owns the car now. And this the sister car to Stirling's C-Type, being extremely enthusiastically driven by Tim Llewellyn. But Sytner at this stage was very much in command of this first ever retrospective 50s sports car race at Le Mans on race day for the main event. Oh, the little Lotus 23 there doing itself no good at all and not helping everybody else by throwing a lot of gravel onto the track, which is already slippery after all the testing and the practicing and the oil that's been dropped. The D-Type Jaguar sounding very authentic as Rick Hall tries to get the Talbot going again. The little DB also indulging in a little auto-crossing moment, and that's such a lightweight car, he was really in danger of tipping the whole thing over there. The Mark VI Lola looked and sounded superb, and a reminder to everybody about where it was that big-engined American cars came back to win Le Mans 4 times in succession in the late 1960s, a development of that Lola Mark VI. A wonderfully mixed field this in the Le Mans historic race. The C-Types, the Aston Martins, and a sad end for the French-entered Alpine Renault, one of the first of the run of Alpine Renault, which ended during the late 70s with the victories with the 2.5-litre turbocharged car, but that is a rather sadly bent and wheelless 1963 car. Disconsolate-looking owner and driver, Gerard Besson, not best pleased to see his car in that condition. Just a few spots of rain on the camera lens there underneath the Dunlop Bridge, which will make life very tricky for these very powerful cars on very narrow 1950s tyre technology. Piper's car, of course, a little bit more modern than the Lister ahead of him, and he's now closing down on Gary Pearson quite quickly. Lovely overhead shot there of Moss cutting through the back markers in the number 18 Jaguar C-Type as he comes back towards the start-finish line away from the Porsche curves. The large crowd at Le Mans was enthralled by this chance to have some pre-24-hour entertainment. Very rare that the Le Mans 24-hour organisers ever let anybody race on the track before the main event. An alarming looking shot there as one of the charter planes brings more fans in to Le Mans Airport, which is right behind the main grandstand. And this is Bernard Dellini's Monopole, car number 49, an extremely rare car, and that is Gary Pearson retiring the Lister Jaguar. What a shame. He'd been leading the race from the very first corner and was running into trouble. But now there is quite some rain, and Barry Williams there in the very rare Togero Jaguar, finding that the curbs are getting very slippery, as is the track, and the rain was really beginning to come down as he came through that corner. Pearson retiring just before the end of the dry spell of this race. Now this could change quite a lot as Tony Drons storms past. Valentine Lindsay gives up in his D-Type Jaguar. But David Piper, 63 years old, first competed at Le Mans in the early 1960s. With a car he's owned since 1965, is now unchallenged at the front of the race. The damp conditions now beginning to catch out everybody. De La Haye Jousselin, the French driver there in his Aston Martin DB4 GT, a very rare and very valuable car, doing more damage to his rear tyres perhaps in order to spin turn his way back into the competition than he might have done by bumping over the curves in the first place. Very dramatic stuff. And Piper on to a tremendous and extremely popular victory. Jack Ickx waves the flag at him, and just behind, Peter Hartmann had closed up in the final lap, wagging the tail of the 1959 winner, the Le Mans 24-hour race in that Aston Martin. Beautiful car. Drivers and cars of all eras, from the late 40s right through to the middle 60s. Some of the drivers of a similar vintage to their cars. MGAs, XKs, Austin Healey's, even a little midget there in the background. Every sort of sports car representing all that was best about Le Mans in that era. An extremely popular addition to the entire entertainment of the Le Mans 24-hour weekend, and one that we look forward to seeing repeated in future years. David Piper collects the spoils from the senior judge at the ACO, with Peter Hartmann in the background there. And so, as the historic cars are put away, the crowd are entertained by various forms of junior formulae. The French national governing body keen to demonstrate to the public how it is that the young French drivers of tomorrow are being brought on, with everything from a motorcycle engine just down to a little lawnmower-powered starter car for the under-8s. The main event at Le Mans traditionally starts at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the crowd look forward to being entertained. They've enjoyed the historic car race. Now there are the parades, the driver presentations, but unfortunately part of the parade is getting covered in rain. Back in the paddock, one of the most important visitors to come to Le Mans for many years, King Juan Carlos of Spain, surrounded by security men. Juan Carlos, a personal friend of Bentley lead driver Martin Brundle. As the build-up continues towards the main race, Butch Leisinger here signing autographs for young fans. The crowd in the grandstand fills up. The hospitality guests in the boxes above the pits take their places. All the drivers make light conversation, of which they remember very little afterwards. Brundle and Juan Carlos attempt to walk down the pit lane in order to look at some of the other cars and teams. As ever, the Hawaiian Tropic Girls turn up, but not exactly tropical weather. Among the other VIPs, we saw Mario Andretti, various French pop and film stars, and even as a guest of Audi, Michel Mouton there, the world's most successful ever rally driver. Paul Frere, twice a winner of Le Mans in the early 60s. Everybody gets to be in the Le Mans pit lane before the race starts. And if you can't drive a race car, you can always drive the PlayStation. PlayStation, of course, big sponsors of the Chrysler team in 2001. The crowd were enjoying some brief sunshine at this stage of the afternoon, but everybody knew what the weather forecast said. The teams were preparing extra sets of rain tyres, and those who knew where to find a roof over their heads were looking forward to keeping it that way. Jack Ickx there, the director of the course, must have been a little apprehensive at this stage as to what was going to happen come the start of the race. The Le Mans 24-hour race, a huge social event, with a crowd drawn from all over the world. and these last few hours, moments of great anticipation. A significant part of the build-up to Le Mans every year for the last few years has been the chance to parade the drivers up and down the pit straight, do some interviews and wave to the crowd. The atmosphere really builds with about 90 minutes to go. The MG drivers very happy to be sitting in their open MGs, perhaps some of the others feeling a little confused in their loyalties. And that's what it's all about. The trophy for the 24-hour race of Le Mans 2001 being brought back to the start-finish line by Dr. Ferdinand Pietsch himself, the president of the Volkswagen Audi Group, the present holders of the title. The parades are done, the autographs, the photographs, the bands, the nonsense. Now it's down to the racing. So if we look at the entire grid here, we see that the two works Audis lead the champion Audi, the number 3 car. Jan Lammers, the interloper, there in front of Stefan Johansson's Gulf coloured car. Brundle, Bernard and Andy Wallace in 7th, 8th and 9th position, followed by the first of the Courages, and then remarkable time by Anthony Reid in the Lola, way faster than anybody else in the class except his teammate Mark Blundell. Then the Paynoses, the other Courages and the Ascaris, the British sports cars, in their first proper Le Mans attempt. The middle of the pack there, where all the Chrysler Vipers are lined up next to each other, just behind the two works Corvettes. And then the rear quarter of the grid taken up by the Callaway, quickest in GT in qualifying, followed by 9 Porsche GT cars. And so it's back in correct formation towards the start. The pace car to clear the track. The flag is dropped and the Le Mans 24 Hours 2001 Bright Sunshine is underway. Immediately Jan Lammers in the dome, the black and white checkered dome, looking very racy. Got the jump on Biela in the number 1 Audi, put himself into 2nd place. As they come down towards the S's for the first time, Olivier Beretta in the Chrysler, determined also to show the Audi that they can run at the front. And indeed takes his opportunity, coming down to Tertre Rouge at the beginning of the long Mulsanne straight. And as they come through Indianapolis and on to Arnage, the Bentley and the Gulf Audi, both looking very strong as well. Every year at Le Mans, the opening hour or so is traditionally run at Grand Prix pace. It is a 24-hour race, it is an endurance race, but it's no longer a race on which you can pace yourself gently. You've got to be competitive and racy throughout the opening sections of the race in order to get yourself a proper advantage, and nobody was prepared to let the Audis disappear into the distance. Beretta determined to force a way past Jan Lammers in the dome. And it's all getting very tight in there. so early on in the race. A clean break by Laurent Aurelio in the number 2 Audi from Lemans, Beretta, Biela, Johansson, and the 2 Bentleys. The MG is very well up, indeed in front of some of their LMP 900 class cars. And on board with the Bentley, you can see the straight line speed of this car. The superior aerodynamics in a straight line slightly cancelled out by the narrower tyres that the regulations require closed cars to wear. And very early on, there's a problem for one of the Chryslers. In the opening laps of traffic, you can get into situations which make you forget that you're in a 24-hour endurance race. That's the number 15 Chrysler, Pierre Dudon there, the team manager, looking a little bit concerned. But immediately, the Audi's setting out as they mean to carry on. Early fastest lap in 3:39.04 for Laurent Aiello as he tries to stretch out a lead, get out of trouble, and get the Audis up to the front early on. But immediately there is trouble because the rain has come down and it's too late to show Stefan Johansson the black and orange danger signal. That car has been off. There's the bodywork all over the other side of the track. Stefan had a big spin. The marshals must get that out of the way, all the carbon fibre, because look at the rain that's coming down. Torrential rain. Back in the pits, and one of the Cadillacs is off also. That's Eric Bernard in the number 5 Cadillac. It looks as though he can get out of there, and the Bentley's in. Slick tyres off. The pit lane warning tutor sounding every second as another car comes in to find more of these rain tyres. Ralph Kenneller's there in the number 3 Audi with his problems, also off in too much and unexpected rain on slick tyres. Almost impossible to drive these cars on those sorts of tyres. Biela in as well, and the irony is that it's completely dry and hot in the pit lane. Biela having a little bit of trouble getting going again. The Bentley, no such problem. Got his wet tyres on, but the front half of the track is dry, and look at the damage done to the Chero Viper. That car has obviously been involved in an accident round on the damp sections of the track. He's going to try and get it back home again. And look, that's the reason why. That's where the damage has been caused. That's the little pill beam wrecked. One of the Courage, one of the Pescarolo team Courage Peugeots, that looks in big trouble as well. The prototype closest to us, and a despairing FFSA Viper team looking at what looks like the total destruction of their dark blue race car. So early on in the race, the Cadillac pace car is out. Problems for the race organisers, some very worried expressions. There's never been a pace car out at Le Mans this early on, and it's a long time since anyone can remember conditions this difficult, with the front half of the course dry and suitable for running slicks on, the back half of the course absolutely impossible. So after just 41 minutes of the race, the Audis can be seen to be in the lead, but Aiello's coming in probably for another tyre change. And there is going to mean then that everybody's strategies have got to be completely reworked. He's going to take the opportunity to refuel. And that means that the dome of Jan Lammers is in the lead, followed by the Bentley and by Biela in the number 1 Audi, lying in 3rd place. That terrible scraping noise you can hear is indeed the remnants of the FFSA number 57 Chrysler Viper being brought back to the pits. That car is almost destroyed. Jan Lammers brings the dome in, and Stefan Johansson, after that earlier accident, has got a new nose section. He's all set. The marshals are holding him in the pit lane. Derek Bell, team coach to the Bentley team, shows his youngest son what the Le Mans 24 Hours is all about. Because of the pace car situation, Johansson and Lammers have been made to wait until the entire field has gone past. And this is why, out on the back of the circuit, the rain is still pouring down and the conditions are very, very difficult indeed. particularly for Martin Brundle in a closed car. But Brundle nevertheless leads from the number 1 Audi, and the Paynos, who made a smart decision, the number 11 car of Klaus Graf, made a smart decision on running intermediate tyres from the start. David Terrien is trying to take advice from his engineers as to what he should do with that car, but it looks like the scrap bin would be the best place for it. On board with Brundle, you get some idea how difficult it is to see out of the windscreen of these closed coupes, and Anthony Reid giving the MG fans something to cheer about as he holds off Brundle through the final Ford chicane and onto the start-finish straight. Reid already been delayed with various problems, but out there running extremely quickly. So he gives Brundle room and lets him past. And more rain spotting onto the cameras there underneath the Dunlop Bridge, and conditions alternating between dark cloud and more rain and bright sunlight around the course. Very tricky indeed. The Equipe de France team know that their day is done. King Juan Carlos sensibly ear-plugged up, being shown around by Richard Lloyd, the team manager, while the Bentley goes through a regular routine stop. All very smooth and organised. Martin Brundle stays in the car. Desperate attempts to move that Viper. Only 4 mechanics, of course, allowed to work on the car in the pit lane, and that's why they can't get it moved. Frank Biela sweeps on in the number 1 Audi. And the 2 MGs running together. Anthony Reid, after his delays, chasing Mark Blundell. And to add to a weekend of woes, the Paynos has now lost a front wheel. That's Frank Lagorce in the number 12 car. And Anthony Reid back in again with the troublesome number 34 MG. But this now is the battle for the lead. Brundle's Bentley is now trying to fend off Frank Biela in the number 1 Audi, and he's going to get by him, I suspect, under braking for the chicane. Bentley faster in a straight line, the Audi quicker on its brakes. And indeed he does, under braking for the Mulsanne chicanes. Tom Christensen satisfied. MG not so happy, but Anthony Reid, if they get that car sorted, is going to put Warren Hughes in. Up in the television commentary, it's all activity. Every language under the sun offering their view on Le Mans 24 hours. And now the other Paynos loses his wheel. There's Jamie Davis coming into the pit lane, and there's a spare tyre rolling right across the racetrack there in front of the leading cars, bouncing across between the Audi and the Bentley. That could have been very dangerous. The Paynoses have clearly had very big problems with the front stub axles. Jamie Davis looking absolutely astonished there. Look, where's my tyre going? But luckily he was on his way into the pits anyway, so he's not got to do what Frank Lagorce had to do, which was to nurse the car round half the track in order to get it back to the pits and get the damage fixed. It's all very tight and the conditions are increasingly slippery. That's Ni Amorim from Portugal sharing the number 14 Chrysler with the 2 Japanese, Ara and Kondo. And the number 75 Mauri Lariviere Porsche down in the GT class, finding oil and a bit of water already affecting the track. He's got to get out of the gravel trap there, and the marshal's going to help him do so. And now the second Audi is also closing up on Brundle in the Bentley. Got to work their way through the traffic here, coming up on one of the Belmondo Vipers. down to Indianapolis, and again, under braking, that's where he gets by. Brundle not going to give up without a fight, looking for a chance to use the traffic here to get back and have a second bite at the number 2 Audi. And you can see in the background there how dark the clouds are. Le Mans afflicted by some of the worst weather remembered at Le Mans for 30 years, and that, sadly, is the Stefan Johansson Gulf Privateer Audi, which have been running so well, now stopped. Now, at last, the rain reaches the front end of the course, and the race management able to see up close what conditions are really like and have been like round the back of the racetrack. Bentley come in order to put on rain tires again. MG do likewise. Julian Bailey strapping in young Kevin McGarrity to have his first attempt at Le Mans in the wet. The amount of water in the pit road there, very clear, as Bielo comes in at the end of his stint. He's done a great job. He started on the front row, the car's in number 1 slot. Tom Christensen gets ready for his stint in the rain. And look at these conditions. Some of the worst conditions ever remembered at Le Mans. And all the drivers in the LMP 675 lighter weight prototype cars said that it was particularly difficult for them because the lightweight cars don't have such downforce and sheer weight to cut through the water. And there's a fine example as the WR Peugeot, the lightest of them all, spins out. And you can see from that shot of the Chero Viper that it's more like a speedboat course than a motor racing circuit at the moment. Another spin for the number 14 Chrysler prototype, and that won't be very popular, throwing a lot of gravel onto the track. Jackie Ickx, course director, faced with tough decisions here. You don't want to interrupt the racing too much. How long is it safe to let them carry on in these conditions? Even Tom Christensen getting it all sideways, under braking for the Dunlop chicane. Max Angelilli brings the Cadillac in, and he's got a problem as well. Yep, nobody was expecting him. He's lost his front tyre, the whole of the offside front wheel, and there it is, down at the back end of the pit lane. Marshall helpfully bringing it back to offer to the Cadillac pit. Normally at this time of evening at Le Mans, there's a glorious summer evening going on, no headlights, good visibility. But this really is terrible conditions. That's the Ascari, and round and round and round. There's just no adhesion on the track there at all. That's where a lot of rubber gets laid down. And John Nielsen now being pushed back out of the way. Water getting into the electrics of all sorts of the cars. We hear popping and banging as they go past the microphones there. And back in the control room, there really are some decisions to be made. Worried faces. How much of this race should and could be run under the pace car? Because it spins like that by experienced men like Stefan Sarrazin in the number 15 Chrysler that are going to influence Jackie Ickx's decision as to how often the spectators are watching a procession of cars behind the pace car. Warren Hughes reinforcing the point that it really is very dangerous up at the Dunlop chicane. One of the major problems for the drivers at Le Mans, of course, is the spray. And you can see the amount of spray being thrown up, completely unsighting people, as Johnny Molam's team Celine car goes off, and there's further damage now to the number 18, the second of the two Courage Peugeots entered by the Pescarolo team, and sadly that's Warren Hughes in the 34 MG. That car looks as though it's done. The marshals getting a further soaking as they help to push it out of the way. Long faces back in the MG hospitality. Jan Lemans' young teammate Donny Crevel's there, who's been caught speeding in the pit lane. has to pay the penalty. That's a stop-and-go penalty in the pit lane, and then, of course, stalls the car as well. Not something you want to do when the electrics are so wet. Pedro Lamy having a quick spin, but he doesn't have any trouble getting going again. Just too much power, too early, out of the corner, Pedro, but no harm done. Tom Christensen ploughs on through the rain, easily in the lead, and that is the number 5 Cadillac. That's the Collard Goossens Bernard car, and they've had a big off. It looks as though they've smacked the wall on the inside there and been thrown into the gravel on the outside at the end of the start-finish straight. Meanwhile, the number 18 Courage Peugeot undergoing a great deal of restorative work after the back end got smacked into the barrier. And the Chéreau Porsche, with Monsieur Chéreau himself at the wheel, also having an off underneath the Dunlop Bridge. And that, after their earlier off we just saw, is going to probably be it for Mark Goossens in the number 5 Cadillac. That car is well and truly stuffed into the tyre wall with tremendous damage to the front end. The marshals have got to remove the car, but that's the end of the Bentley. The number 7 Brundle Bentley, now with Guy Smith at the wheel. That's Smith's helmet appearing from inside the car, and the rear of that car is on fire. The problem has been with the electronic actuators for the gearbox, which have been getting very wet, then they've been getting very hot and shorting out, and they've caused an oil fire down by the side of the gearbox there, and the marshals will be very keen to get that put out just as soon as possible, if he can get his extinguisher to work. There we go, and get that fire out. Guy Smith, the young Yorkshireman who's had such a successful weekend, Stefan Ortelli, his co-driver, shaking his head in despair. That is a sad end. Ortelli knows that there's no getting that car back to the pits to get it fixed, and that is the end of the race for Brundle, Ortelli and Guy Smith. Another quick off there for the number 21 Ascari, being driven at that moment by Klaus Zwart, the man who founded that particular make of sports car. But whatever the weather, whatever everybody else does, however many spins and mechanical failures, the Audis are pounding on, making it really look quite easy. Not so easy for one of the Belmondo Vipers. That's the Kumpen Galzane Lanier's car, who's done himself a lot of no good at the front and is now going to be running over bits of carbon fibre all the way back to the pits. So, after 5 hours, it's Audi's 1, 2 and 3, because the Kellerner's Herbert Taves car is up to 3rd place, in front of the best of the Courage Peugeots, the 2nd Bentley in 5th place. And then this car, the first of the Chryslers. Everything works well if you're a professional race driver. Olivier Beretta enjoying the attentions of the Chrysler physio and stocking up on his energy bars at the same time. A very dramatic spin there for the British entered PK Sport Porsche. Mike Yule's at the wheel, and I'm not sure if he did just miss the barrier, but he knocked down all the indicators along the way, because it really is raining again extremely heavily. And whilst it's doing that there, it's still dry back at the pits as Christensen straps in Emanuele Pirro. But while all goes smoothly for Audi, it doesn't go so smoothly for MG. The pretty little Lola being pulled back into the pits, Mark Blundell at the wheel for some further attention to the engine. And that car is the car that's really caught up extremely well with Johnny Herbert at the wheel, the number 3 champion entered Audi. Didier Tays getting ready to take over, receiving some instructions from team manager Thierry Boutsen. And the Courage Peugeot was in 4th place. He's going to have to get out of the gravel trap without any trouble. Laurent Redon, not probably as quick as his two teammates, Sébastien Bourdais in particular. Torrential rain now is reducing this race to something of a farce at this particular point. It is not possible in a modern prototype car to get round, and indeed that Pénos, that's David Brabham's Pénos, has had failure, partially caused by the heavy rain, out at the back of the circuit. The number 8 Bentley enjoying a regular pit stop, whilst Herbert is out of the car and Didier Tay is being strapped into the third place champion racing car. It's interesting to see the strain of a long stint at Le Mans on the face of a driver as experienced as Johnny Herbert. And he doesn't just need the towel to dry off from his physical exertions underneath the helmet. As you can see, his race suit is soaked right through. He needs a shower and a change while his teammate sets out rather cautiously. Two and a half hours in his Audi, causing Johnny some pain. His badly smashed ankles from all those years ago still make walking difficult for him. The WR has another spin. In fact, as the replay shows, the WR did actually touch the barrier twice during that spin, so he'll be quite lucky to get going again and carry on from there. So while Johnny Herbert gets back into the luxury motorhomes that are provided for all the top drivers, where he can have a shower and a change and get some rest before his next stint, he's going to be disappointed, because there isn't going to be another stint. That is the number 3 Audi coasting to a halt. Didier Tays hasn't completed a lap on his return to Le Mans alongside Ralph Kellerner's and Johnny Herbert, who'd driven so well to get this car up to 3rd position after their early delays. So both the privateer Audis are out. A disappointed Thierry Boutsen talking to his mechanics there. And while it's tough for some, it's not so tough for others. Out on the racetrack, the night wears on. Olivier Beretta straps himself in to the leading of the 3 Chryslers. And Marc Blundell not messing around. He may have lost a lot of laps, but he's trying to unlap himself from Pirot in the leading Audi. The Lola-built MG has really proved itself, and albeit a little frail in this its first ever race, it is undeniably quick and very pretty. Donny Crevel's there in Jan Lemans' Dome Judd, with the Judd engine beginning to indicate that it may be having some problems. Mario Andretti keeps an eye on all the proceedings. Perhaps the greatest driver never to have won Le Mans. The nighttime round of pit stops continues. And Frank Biela's turn on the massage table. The troubled Pénos not stopping in the pit lane, straight into the garage, and that looks like a retirement this time. It really has been the worst ever Pénos Le Mans. Hardy souls enjoy a nighttime drink, but in the Audi hospitality area, kings and members of the world's media enjoy sushi and champagne. may be an endurance race for the drivers, it's also an endurance race for the spectators, the media, the caterers, and everybody who has a job to do throughout the long, wet night. The number 8 Bentley's in for a regular stop. Butch Leitzinger, the American, handing over to Britain's Andy Wallace, the lead driver on the team. This car has been delayed by similar gearbox problems, but not so acute as those which brought Martin Brundle's run to an end. So as it comes up to midnight, 8 hours into the race, the equivalent of 4 Grand Prix have already been run, but we're only a third of the way into this race. And given the weather conditions, it's been one tough event so far. Audi first and second from the Courage Peugeot, the second Bentley just leading the Chrysler, and that is one of the Chryslers having a spin right onto the start-finish straight underneath the watchful eye of the few spectators who are still around this later on a very damp French Saturday evening. And nobody's immune to an occasional mistake. That's the number 2 Audi, just too tight onto the curb there, and this is drama indeed. That's the Judd engine Reynard in the 675 class, the Dick Barber entered car number 36, and that car is seriously on fire. Every fire extinguisher in the pit lane is going to be needed to put that out. A very nasty situation. That car had just been refueled, the engine caught fire, and that was a potential threat to the entire pit lane, but safely dealt with. Now the departure of the MGs with their various woes and of the 2 Dick Barber Judd engine Reynards means this VW turbo engine Reynard, last year's car, being very sensibly driven by Delatraz and Genet. Back in the pits, this is the number 2 Audi, which has actually got the rear of the car off and being worked on here. Must have been a result of the spin, and this is what happened. The number 2 car on the brakes, on the dirt and the wet and the loose gravel, and that's caused the Audi engineers some moments of real worry. Never quite sure how much damage has been done to the car. But if you're a very damp spectator, the best thing to do in the small hours of the morning is to get down to the funfair and forget the racing for an hour or two. So after 12 hours of racing, the Audis are first and second, and the number 8 Bentley has got up to third place, albeit 10 laps behind. In the GT category, it's all Porsche, and in the LMP 675 category, the little Reynard Lola leads, and in the GTS category, the Corvettes have appeared above the Salines. That's been tight, with the Chrysler Vipers in there still with a chance as well. Regular stop for the number 63 Corvette, that's Ron Fellows handing over. A lot of close inspection going on at the front wheel there on that Corvette. Wondering why it's suffering so much damage. And that's one of the Chryslers stopped out on the Mulsanne straight. Faintest glimmers of dawn beginning to show there. So the decision is to take the rain tyres off the Corvette and put slick tyres on. Ron Fellows will have reported that he reckons the conditions are up to it. Similar discussions going on up and down the pit lane. What tyres should we be running and what's going to happen to the weather? Different sorts of work for different sorts of people. The Bentley races on towards the dawn. After their various gearbox problems, they are now too far behind to catch the Audis, barring any problems. But a very soggy dawn does reveal the little Reynard, running in a strong 6th place overall, chasing down the last remaining of the Salines. Jenny has been doing most of the driving in that car and has really impressed. Johnny O'Connell now taking his turn at the wheel of the number 63 Corvette, leading the GTS class now as the Saline challenge has faded and a lot of the Vipers have thrown themselves into the barrier during the night. Means that the Corvettes are now running 1st and 2nd in their class. The spectator bank's pretty much deserted at this time of the morning. The control room still keeping an eye on everything that's going on. It's going to be one very soggy breakfast for most of these not so happy campers. And it's still pretty wet on the track too, with the number 6 Cadillac, that's the Wayne Taylor, Max Angelilli, Christophe Tinceau car, being driven there by Wayne Taylor, has another off just coming up to the start-finish line. Problems now for the little Reynard. Jean-Denis Delatraz at the wheel talking to his team manager. There's work to be done, and there's work to be done too on the Audi. Laurent Aiello at the wheel. The fuel's in, the new tyres are on, and away goes the number 2 car. The number 17 Courage Peugeot still being driven very strongly by Sébastien Bourdais and Jean-Christophe Bouillon, the ex-touring car driver, been very quick in that car. Laurent Redon been a couple of seconds off the pace, but still running up there in the top 6. See very clearly what sort of night it's been here at Le Mans, with all the debris, the rubber, the carbon fibre there on the side of the track, and through these chicanes here, great deal of gravel lying to catch the unwary who stray offline. Though these two cars are quite close on the track here, with the Courage Peugeot in front of the VW, they are in fact separated by a lap. But worryingly for the Pescarolo team, those are the first signs of mechanical frailty there. Puffs of smoke coming out on the downshift there, being relayed by the trackside commentator to the French fans who had high hopes of that vivid green race car.
Il a tapé un petit peu avec la carrosserie arrière, mais il y a moins de dégâts que prévu, donc il a pu repartir très vite.
Now down in the GT class, the number 77 Porsche and the number 83 Porsche have been having a battle since about midnight for the leadership of the GT class. Young Gunnar Jeanette there in number 77, coming into the pits now, has been extremely quick, just 19 years of age, class winner in this vehicle at the Daytona 24 Hours, and looking extremely strong here, ably supported by Romain Dumas and Philippe Azebrook. The Italians here in the number 83 car, Babini, Rosa and Luca Drudi, have been playing catch-up through the night and done so extremely effectively. That looks as though this class battle for the GT class is going to go right down to the wire. For the moment, the number 77 car has just spent a little too long in the pits, and there is the 83 car passed into the lead of the class as the number 77 car begins to make its way out of the pit lane. So, changes of lead going on there, even if at the front of the race overall, the Audis appear to have got the race in their grasp, running first and second, some 11 laps in front of the third place Bentley. There we have it, the 83 and 77 cars on the same lap, being pursued still by 4 more Porsches with the Callaway long gone. No dramas for the number 1 Audi apart from the Le Mans weather. And it may be Sunday morning, but it doesn't mean the weather's changed. And if you're driving a closed Bentley, whose windscreen wiper doesn't stick to the windscreen, this is not going to be a popular change of weather. And Kondo there in the third of the Chryslers has had a most peculiar accident, under braking for the first Mulsanne chicane, just lost it completely and smacked the barriers. And here's the car now needing to be fixed back in the pits. And perhaps this shot is a neat metaphor for Le Mans 2001, as the number 2 Audi easily laps the leading of the 3 Chryslers once more. They've really not faced much opposition as Sunday draws on. And that's the third of the Chryslers, this driven by the young Japanese Ara, and the engine has let go and the whole of the back end of the car's on fire, and he's very keen to get out indeed. The onboard extinguishers are working, but there's a lot of fire and flame there, and I think he feels he would be safer some considerable distance away from a very hot race car. Now, as Wendlinger brings the number 16 car in, the mechanics will want to be sure that they're not going to have the same problem. And Ara, using his onboard mobile phone, is talking to the team management back in the pits. Sorry, boss, it's stopped. Now, all that action means that the number 16 Chrysler is closing in on the Courage Peugeot after its various delays. They're running 4th and 5th, a long way behind the leading Audis and the Bentley, but the Audis are going for a gearbox change. Tom Christensen has chosen to get a fresh gearbox on the back end of the leading Audi. They know they could do this very quickly, as the 2 Corvettes nearly cut the number 17, 4th place Courage Peugeot in pieces, and down comes the rain once more. And remarkably, after a rapid gearbox change, Pirot is back out in the lead car and has come back in again, in fact, in order to get on his rain tyres with a new gearbox, new set of tyres. Is there anything that's going to stop the Audi steamroller? Once again, Jackie Hicks has had to make the decision to put the safety car out. The Cadillac there running with his lights flashing through torrential rain. The Goodyear balloon gets to look down onto, once again, not racing at Le Mans, just running steadily behind the pace car, but really conditions are too dangerous. Back in the control room, continued concern about how to make sure that these cars do not fly off the road aquaplaning in rainwater that is heavier than anyone, and certainly Jackie Hicks there, looking very worried, can remember. And while the rain comes down, it makes more sense to be inside another one of the hospitality areas than it does out in the pouring rain, trying still to get a shot of your favourite race car. And disaster for the Courage Peugeot. Dropped a valve inside the V6 Peugeot engine, and that car is now severely crippled and will have to limp round to the pits to try and see if it can wait for the finish, which is over 90 minutes away. Now, there are still pit stops to do. The unexpected can still occur, but the number 1 car leads the number 2 car by a full lap, but the number 2 car is extremely keen to unlap itself. No orders in the Audi team, and the opposition continues to destroy itself. There, the last of the Cadillac entry stopped out on the circuit. The Bentley circulating effortlessly and without too many troubles, and though that's a brave effort by a Courage Peugeot with a burnt engine, the rest of the field is beginning to close up for the traditional photo finish. Viela in the number 1 Audi, the Bentley team cheer encouraging Andy Wallace at the wheel of the number 8 Bentley. The class leading and probably class winning VW turbo-powered blue and yellow Reynard there, keeping up with the leaders and making sure they're in the shot. After a race like we've seen this year, it really has been the Grand Prix of endurance. And the marshals get their last chance to acknowledge the heroics of those who've driven through some of the worst conditions seen at the South in many years. Jack Yates waits with the checkered flag ready. Emanuele Pirro at the wheel of the #1 Audi. Last year's winners waving his Audi flag, comes up to the line in a triumphant and slow procession. And so, Le Mans 2001, the winner is Audi, exactly the same driving team as in 2000. Emanuele Pirro right out of the cockpit, absolutely delighted, and the Bentley pit wall giving a great cheer for third place, first time out for 71 years by the Bentley team. Chrysler an honourable fourth, the Reynard a remarkable fifth, and the crowd have invaded the track in order to salute the first three cars. Audi, every reason to be delighted with the winner's trophy. Capello, Pescatori and Aiello there, second place. A strong drive, disappointed not to have taken the challenge a little closer to the leading car through the final 2 hours.
Victory next year.
And victory next year, says the mayor of Le Mans, rather optimistically to the Bentley team, who can indeed hope that that is exactly what they'll be back for. Andy Wallace, Eric van der Poel and Butch Leitzinger getting the most tremendous ovation from all the British fans who've gathered underneath the podium. But there's no doubt who the overall victors are. It's Audi, another whitewash. First 3 last year, first 2 this year. A triumph for Christensen, Biela and Pirro. GTS category was a clean sweep for the Works Corvettes. And in the all Porsche finishing order in the GT category, a great win for Rosa, Babini and Drudy. And so the 675s, easy for the Reynard above the little WR. That wet Le Mans is how 2001 will be remembered. Lots of excitement, the return of MG, the return of Bentley, but above all, a tremendous triumph again for the Audi team.
Thank you all. Stay with me back next year.